You should.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. It's Julie Roginski here with Olga Lautman, and we are so happy to have everybody here. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Pax Americana. I see that the chat is already hopping, so thank you for that. Olga, I feel like we should just devote the show today to the disgrace that was the Kushner-Witkoff sellout of Ukraine. I did a Substack on it a few days ago where I said it is very similar to the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of 1939. For people who don't know what that is when the foreign minister of Germany, Nazi Germany, Joachim von Ribbentrop, sat down with the Russian foreign minister, Vyacheslav Molotov, and they secretly decided to, well, first they not publicly, but they had a non-aggression pact, but then secretly in that non-aggression pact, they also carved up Eastern Europe into spheres of influence. And I know that it is not in fashion to compare anybody to Hitler and to the Nazis, but in this case, I think it's an apt comparison, because what you saw happening in Moscow a few days ago was in some ways even worse than what happened with the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. At least there you could make the argument that they were doing this for what they consider to be their national well-being. I don't want to hear from people who are going to argue with me about what that really meant. I get it. They were awful, horrible people. It led to the worst war in human history, and we're not debating that. But in this case, you had Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff negotiating the sellout of Ukraine, not for what is good for the United States, although the sellout of Ukraine would not be good for the United States, no matter who was negotiating it, but what was best for them and their financial interest. And in some ways, that is even worse, that if this were being sold to us as something that was good for the United States, because it is only good for their pocketbooks. I know it's kind of a controversial thing to say. Maybe it's not, but I don't know what your thoughts on that are. And if you disagree, let me know.
No, it's exactly 100% what happened. Kushner and Witkoff. First of all, just a reminder that, of course, media always seems to forget to, deliver a backdrop. But Kushner was back in Moscow. He was back in Moscow. The media made it seem as if it's like, oh, wow, he just landed in Moscow for the first time. He was there I'm sure he's been there several times since, but in 2015, he was there, dining with Putin's inner circle, Vexelberg, him and Ivanka Trump were both there, dining with Vexelberg, Abramovich, Putin's, one of his closest oligarchs. And he has had financial interest with Russia to begin with. So you have, and he has a very over a decade long relationship with Dmitriev.
Yeah. I'm sorry to pause for people who don't know, Kirill Dmitriev, who was also at this meeting. It was a very small meeting. I think it's important to note the American side only had Kushner, Witkoff, and a few translators. And the Russian side had Putin's, Ushakov, Putin's foreign advisor, and Kirill Dmitriev, who is not officially in the government, other than he runs this Russian sovereign wealth fund, but he's basically Putin's wallet. That is his nickname. That is the guy that, and I mean Putin's wallet, not the Russian government's wallet.
No, Putin's
personal wallet. So to have a guy who is basically there negotiating on Putin's personal behalf with people who are negotiating on their own and Donald Trump's personal behalf, and by stress personal, over the fate of Ukraine, the biggest, longest war on a European soil still since 1945. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? And why is this not on the front page of every newspaper? Why is this not? This is the biggest foreign policy scandal, I think, in our nation's history. This is the biggest sin that our government has committed since slavery. I don't know how else to put it. This is that serious. We have people doing this for the benefit of their pocketbook and nothing else. They are selling out NATO. They are selling out the Pax Americana. They are selling out a sovereign nation. They are selling out other sovereign nations like Taiwan. They are selling out nuclear disarmament. There is so much that they are doing all to get rich that it boggles the mind that this is not, I mean, I get the Jeffrey Epstein thing, it's important, but why is this not front page 24/7 news everywhere, every day? New York Times, I ask you this, but I interrupted you. Sorry, Olga, go ahead.
Not to mention, before I get back to Dmitriev, that Witkoff was advising Putin's advisor, on how to sell the surrender plan to Trump, which again, it's very interesting because it's the degree of separation that Trump is trying to create between him and the Russian government is interesting. But these calls were intercepted. And now just again, because I like to hop around like with scattered thoughts. But to get back to what this is about, Bloomberg about a week ago released transcripts of Witkoff calling Putin's advisor, Ushakov, and basically telling him, now this was 2 days before Zelensky arrived in Washington, and he advised him to tell Putin to set up a call to flatter Trump over his Middle East success, quote unquote, because it's not that, and how to pitch Russia's 28-point plan to Trump in order to make him, basically to sell it to him, to sell to all of us, and to try to shove it down Ukraine's throat. So you have Trump's real estate fixer running around and advising the Russian government on how, say, even if we take this story at face value, because they actually did have transcripts and the call, advising the U.S. president, the Russian government, on how to get around the U.S. president. People used to go to jail for this. I mean, I don't understand how that, so this is the pretext before even this visit. Second of all,
and then Trump's like, no problem, and rewards him by sending him back to Moscow to continue this. And
second of all, I am confident, very confident, that it was Russia who released this transcript. Because people, I saw several like MAGA sycophants, saying, oh, whoever released in the U.S. government should be fired. Then there were people floating that it could have been the Brits who released this transcript, or someone in across Europe, one of the European intelligence agencies. I am beyond confident that this is Russia who released it. This is part of their playbook because, one, they don't want a plan. They created this plan knowing that Ukraine is going to reject it, knowing that Trump really is not going to get anywhere with this plan. But their main focus is to continue their genocidal war. Putin doesn't want to end it. Putin has reconstructed the whole economy on a war economy. He can't end it. If he ends the war tomorrow, I mean, the stagflation and the economy will just really collapse inside of Russia. It's already teetering. Imagine with this. So he doesn't want this. He's sitting and kicking the can down the road like, yeah, how about we have another meeting? Yeah, how about we try this plan, that plan? This is all, dangles for Trump while he continues his genocidal war. And he started this in February. We're in December. We are no closer to anything. And I promise you, next summer, we're going to have the same discussion. We'll be in the same position. So for Russia, this would be strategic. One, to show that Witkoff and Trump are working on behalf of the Russians in order to shove a surrender plan down Ukraine and Europe's throat. And two, to send a nice, thing to Trump message. We have recordings because with Russia, they record everything. Everything. You taking, going to the bathroom is being recorded. So, if they have this recordings, who knows what other recordings they have, particularly with Putin earlier this year, instructing every single top business leader in Russia to come up with the most lucrative and like flashy projects to hand to Trump in order to force a Ukrainian surrender and break support for NATO, break support for Ukraine, stop the weapon shipments. So who knows what was caught in those discussions? Because trust me, every time, 6 times Witkoff has been there. Every time he's there and every time he sees the Russians in the Middle East, these discussions are taking place. The Russians are probably one of the better intelligence services they run, and they know how to, put you into compromising conversations without you even realizing what is happening in order to record it and have this as leverage over you. And the final thing I'll say, so you have Kushner and Witkoff showing up in Moscow. Actually, a few things happened interesting. One, Putin made them wait for several hours, which
is great.
and
they did. I mean, this is the United States.
Yeah, he made him wait, and in typical Russian fashion, not only did Putin make him wait, but which really made me scratch my head because I, kept checking the news of the meeting. But he was on live TV at an event. So he not only made them wait for hours, but he actually went on live TV at some event to make sure that everyone knows that they're sitting right now waiting while he's sitting here at some bullshit event. So that's one. Two, Kushner this time, who came back to Moscow, his beloved home, we have to remember, has the whole pipeline with Saudi Arabia, and Dmitriev is a direct pipeline from Russia from the Kremlin to Saudi Arabia, to Qatar, to UAE, in order to literally move sanction, like help Russian oligarchs and Russian entities avoid sanctions. And he uses various Middle Eastern vehicles. He has very close relationships with, these regimes across the Middle East, longer than the U.S. does. And this is exactly, so we don't even know what's being funneled to Kushner via the Saudis or via, all his other projects.
And we don't know what's being funneled to Witkoff via the World Liberty Financial, through the crypto fund that he started with Trump. I mean, listen, it's not the beauty of this. And this is where I think the press is just falling down on this, right? If this were all done under cover of darkness and secret, then the press would get interested because they think they were trying to hide something. But because it is being so blatantly done out in the open, I mean, the next time there's a Democratic president and that person wants to do something super controversial, don't hide it. Don't hide. Just go do it. Just own it. Because apparently the press is going to be like, oh, okay, all right, no problem. I mean, it's just like, I can't, to be honest, I cannot believe what I'm seeing. I mean, I can't believe it. And the funny part is, everybody's like, oh, Putin spent 5 hours with them. Okay, let's be very clear. 4 hours of that was a lecture about Russian history, the Putin version, about how Ukraine doesn't really exist, how Kiev and Rus, was really Moscow, like Muscovy and things that, no historian would agree with, but nevertheless, this is now what Vladimir Putin does. That was the first 4 hours. And the last hour was probably like, okay, how much money is, Kirill's going to take care of the details with you on the back end about the money.
And again, just a reminder, their goal is not to force a surrender plan, because Russia devised this 28-point surrender plan that they've been floating around. They know themselves no one's going to take it. Not Ukraine, not Europe. Their goal is to cause, which is their bigger goal, to cause cracks within the NATO alliance, to cause a transatlantic rift with Europeans seeing U.S. basically acting as messengers for Moscow. This is their goal. It's not that they want more than Donbass. They want all of Ukraine. Then they want to move on to Lithuania and Latvia and Estonia and Moldova and Georgia and Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. This is what they want. But this is all like a smoke screen devised not to stop anything, because Putin has no interest. He cannot. He literally cannot stop this war. Because, like I said, just in the summer, he sat and signed a presidential decree ordering, every, like the top 400 companies to shift over into war production on top of already what is happening. And he mimicked, not mimicked, he hinted at a broader war. This wasn't about Ukraine. He said, we are coming very close to other countries attacking us, and we need to be prepared to go to war. So this decree that he signed wasn't about Ukraine. It wasn't about anything. The type of weapons that he authorized has nothing to do with Ukraine. This has to do with Europe, the rest of Europe. So, Putin is in this for the long haul. He's pretty happy for him. He's sitting in the Kremlin. He can carry this, genocidal invasion on. He's already been doing this since 2014. So we're now entering 12 years of, this failure of the West to stop Russia, which is incredible. You have one, lawless, collapsing country, and then you have 30 plus countries, and this imbalance. The fact that this one lawless country can continue 12 years later to do this is incredible. But another thing that the media absolutely not in any capacity, forget connecting dots, they didn't pick up any capacity, that this meeting went so well for Russia with Witkoff and Kushner, that it wasn't even 8 hours later that they decided to pull some U.S. Marine, I think that's his position, who has been sitting in Russia's detention center and sentenced for whatever reason. They decided within 8 hours to drag him out front page and say that we are sentencing him now to 10 years. Because he attempted to attack a security guard inside the, penal colony. So you have, not only Witkoff and Kushner running around like jesters, freaking embarrassing the United States and humiliating the United States in Moscow, but then you have Moscow hours later dangling an American military person and saying, oh yeah, he attempted to, with no evidence, of course, he attempted, he carried out a violent act against one of the security guards. So now we're increasing his prison term to 10 years. Was this mentioned anywhere? Did you hear about it? Because had I not read Russian press, I would have never, ever known that an American is being, dragged out, humiliated, and a military. They have several. They have a school teacher. They made sure to pick an American military member to dangle him out and say, oh, he did this. Yep. We're now upping his sentence to 10 years, and with no evidence, hours after Witkoff and Kushner left. That shows you where that meeting went and how that
shows you the priorities that Kushner and Witkoff had. Did they mention this American? If they did, that was their answer.
Yeah, and I'm sure they didn't, because the only thing they're concerned with is money. That's it. I mean, Kushner is not a government employee. Witkoff is a shady real estate guy from New York who dealt with Russian mafia back in the day, deals with Blavatnik, which is Putin's other money man. I'm sure
Kushner did too in his real estate, or his dad did. I mean, look, here's the reality. Jared Kushner, and I've known that family a long time because, believe it or not, they used to be big Democratic donors back in the day. His dad was. Jared was a little kid running around back then. they're totally immoral. I mean, like broken. But the one thing that's fascinating to me is that they hold up their grandparents, Jared's grandparents, who are Holocaust survivors. Like they hold them up like they are deities, which is absolutely right. I mean, if you survive the Holocaust, you should be held up that way. And yet, has Jared learned nothing? There is literally a genocide happening right now. Right now. Zelensky, parentheses, Jewish, is being called a Nazi.
Yep.
Right?
No.
By the Russians. Where's Jared? Nowhere. I mean, it's sick, and there's some sort of psychological. I'm not a psychiatrist. Am I going to pretend to psychoanalyze the situation? But there is a level of brokenness in these people. I mean, how do you put your head down on the pillow at night knowing that you are furthering a genocide for personal financial gain? Like, how much money is enough? Like, Jared Kushner is never going to have to worry about making rent in his life.
His great-grandchildren are not going to have to worry.
How much, but I mean, how much is enough, right? Like, how much is enough here?
I mean, again, it goes to the bigger, discussion, just period. With we see the same story happening yesterday. Saw news, well, not news, CNN direct, I believe Michael Dell, to donate, billions to Trump. Really? Like, really, like, for his whatever, this nonsense freaking child fund. Really? Like, Della is wealthy enough. If he wanted to, one, he can donate $6.5 billion to any children's organization that exists and is doing work domestically in the United States or across the globe. Two, he can open his own children organization, child organization. So why is it that you need to go and make $6.5 billion donation to Trump? Money, more power, more money.
More money.
Now, how much money is enough to these people? Apparently,
it's a sickness and it's a disease, and it's I mean, you've got Jared Kushner playing dress up, diplomat dress up, while I mean, when he and Ivanka went to Israel and were lauded and cheered for accomplishing this ceasefire. And it's laughable because there was no ceasefire. There was no ceasefire. There was a pretend ceasefire that took place in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, to which neither the Israelis nor the Palestinian or Hamas showed up. But, you had Qatar and you had the Egyptians and you had, the Turks and you had all these people standing there applauding Trump for a ceasefire and Kushner for a ceasefire that actually, check out what's happening. By the way, I know it's off the front pages because the press just follows the Pied Piper off the cliff, but wanted to check out what's happening in Gaza right now.
Yeah, and the only thing I will give them credit is to release the rest of them.
The hostages released.
That they did.
Yeah.
And that was an accomplishment. Other than that,
but that's not a ceasefire. That's a release.
No, absolutely not. That's releasing the hostages. That has nothing to do with a ceasefire. No, so I mean, the whole thing is honestly sickening. And like I said, Ukraine is not going to accept this. Trump and Putin can dream up whatever they want. They could dream up taking Finland and splitting Germany and whatever they want. They're not going to take, these countries have their own objectives, their own priorities, their own national security, their own constitutions. So this is, again, not going anywhere. Trump's Thanksgiving bullshit blew by, after the media making a circus of it. Oh my God. Well, and this drives me nuts. This really, since 2014, this has really been one of my biggest pet peeves, that you have Russia committing the worst atrocities. Kiev was without electricity, for most of the day because of all the strikes on the energy infrastructure, on top of all the strikes on apartment buildings. I mean, you have Russia right now strategically every single night targeting people's homes while they're sleeping. And that's it. I mean, like you really have to be morally bankrupt and have some kind of dysfunction in your brain, to say, let's go after sleeping kids. But this is what they're doing, you know. And the media, instead of ever reporting on these things, they report on it for a bit, then they disappear. And, the only reason Ukraine was back in the news was because of this Kremlin drafted, smoke screen of a plan. And then the media started turning it again into another circus. Oh my God, how close are we to peace? Where is this framing of media? How close are we to having pushing Russia out of Ukraine? Because here you want to achieve peace. Here's a sure way, method to achieve peace. Get Russia the hell out of a foreign country. And there you have peace, because Ukraine's not interested in invading Russia or attacking Russia. The minute, Russia goes back, Ukraine has been striking refineries and critical infrastructure in Russia. They'll never launch another drone that way. If anything, we always joke that we're going to put such a fortify the border with alligators and moats and electric zapping stuff and like a freaking 10 million foot wall, everything to make sure here Russia, this is your side and this is Ukraine's. But the media, brought it back and made Trump's Thanksgiving demands as if that's it, like the whole world is going to stop and that's it. Oh, Trump said Thanksgiving and that's it. Ukraine either lay down and surrender, or just you have to, go against the United States. We're already in December. Nothing happened. Trump moved on. And Trump is, knows how the media is, and throws these things out in order to kind of like the media reminds me of like penguins, and like you have little fishies, sardines being directed and they all come flopping over there. So Trump knows this very well, and he threw out this, thing to get away from Epstein, to get away from the war crimes they're committing in the Caribbean, and to move the topic elsewhere, to something else. And we're now in December, and guess what? We are as close to any kind of a ceasefire as we were in January. And that's it.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's laughable. And the part that I guess upsets me more than anything else, and aside from the obvious, which is that these people are monsters, is that the media just keeps falling for it every time. Like, oh, this is going to be the time. This is going to be the time.
I've never heard a Wolf Blitzer or, people who should know better, who've been around for decades.
One gets it. Erin Burnett gets it on CNN.
Oh, okay.
Erin Burnett gets it. If you want to know what's happening in Russia, listen to Erin Burnett. She gets it. She has the right people on. She understands what's at stake here. Nobody else.
Yeah, and the rest, decades. I mean, Blitzer has been around how many wars? Like too many that I can't even name. And, the fact that he would make a circus around this and take it seriously instead of saying, well, what about the United States, demanding that Russia leave? There we go. That's a simpler way to get a plan. Anyway, so we're back to square one with this. In the process, it is so damaging. You opened up with, Pax Americana and our transatlantic alliance is being broken. And it is so damaging every single time there is a spectacle like this. You have Europe, who now more and more becomes distrustful, stops sharing intelligence, and comes to like a very rude awakening, that the United States is now, on behalf of Russia and other autocrats around the globe, they cannot be trusted. And I mean, there was an article that came out recently, a few days ago, that, European leaders called Zelensky and said, listen, Trump, which I'm like, did they just wake up from a coma? But they called Zelensky and said, oh, the United States doesn't have your interest and they're trying to help Russia. Oh, good morning to you.
Yeah. Well, speaking of NATO, Marco Rubio, Olga, did not bother showing up to any discussions with our European allies in the last week. He did bother showing up to Trump's cabinet meeting where he sat next to the president and just sucked up to him in ways that would have made a contestant on The Celebrity Apprentice blush. But why don't we talk a little bit about what the United States is doing to NATO, which frankly is giving the middle finger to the greatest alliance in the nation, in the history of not only the nation, but of the world.
Yeah, so Marco Rubio is not showing up to meetings, a NATO meeting, which, U.S. always used to show up until this regime came back. And at the same time, he sent one of his advisors, and forgive me because I read so many names. I'm good with the Russian names. Then when it comes to the American, like people in Trump's cabinet, unless it's a Rubio, but it's someone who's a deputy in the State Department, or one of the top people under Rubio. He sent him. And this is an anti-NATO person who basically has been saying that, we need to, basically break apart NATO. So this is who he picked as a replacement to show up. And not only that, yesterday, this person, and I'm going to pull it up.
He said his name is Christopher Landau, his deputy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So yesterday, he also started railing at NATO over them pulling back on defense purchases from the United States.
Well, guess what, my friends? What are we doing here when we're sucking up to the very government that NATO was created to oppose?
And 1 minute we are providing weapons, next minute we're threatening to cut weapons. I think that sends a signal to the German and French defense companies, like, we better ramp up and make sure that we produce enough weapons to secure European security, because we can always rely on the United States that they promise these weapons, or that we buy weapons from them, and then Trump wakes up in a bad mood, or has a phone call with Putin who says, nope, I don't want these 35s in Europe. Okay. And then calls headset, hey, cancel that order. So, I mean, Europe cannot defend their security like this. It's a big continent. They need to make sure that they have, enough weapons to defend their continent, and they need to increase it themselves. So
yeah, and I just want to talk about what Landau, the Deputy Secretary of State, said about NATO. Back in June, he posted on X, quote, NATO is still a solution in search of a problem. Now, he claimed he deleted it very quickly. Spokesperson of the State Department downplayed the significance, calling it a quote, casual, lighthearted remark intended for a brief private exchange. Okay, I don't know why that's any better. But, this is who Rubio purposely is sending to represent him. Somebody who did tweet out NATO is a solution in search of a problem. Now, I don't know how you know anything about history and think that NATO is a solution in search of a problem. The problem exists. Its name is the Russian Federation. Before that, its name was the Soviet Union when NATO was created. And the solution is that we all band together in the West with our shared ideals of democracy, sovereignty, and freedom. And we defend collectively anybody who would aggress against us based on those values, which is exactly what NATO did after 9/11. Now, I don't know how old Christopher Landau is. I don't know if he wasn't around for 9/11, which would make him 25 years old. But I suspect he's a little older than that, which means that he must have remembered when we, the United States, invoked Article 5 in the only time in NATO's history, and every member of NATO collectively came to our defense and sent troops to Afghanistan, even people who had no business being there. From their
and died for the
United States. They weren't attacked. We were.
Yep.
So there's your problem. And there's your solution. And this is who this president and this Secretary of State have decided that they're going to send to the most important alliance that this nation has ever seen to represent the United States before our NATO allies.
Yep.
And then they're upset that NATO is looking to their own defense industries, the NATO member countries, and not buying from us. Well, do you trust us at this point to buy from us? Do you trust us to share intelligence? Do you trust us to support Article 5 in case one of them gets attacked? If you are the president of Poland right now, or the leaders of Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Finland, all NATO countries, do you think that the United States is going to come to your defense when and if you are attacked by the only country that has attacked you since 1945? That would be the Soviet Union, which now is the Russian Federation. Finland was in a war with Russia in 1940. So were the Baltics. That is how the Baltics became part of the Soviet Union. Poland, we'll end here where we started, was carved up by the Nazi foreign minister and the Soviet foreign minister. And if you go to Poland today and you ask the Poles if they like the Germans less than they like the Russians, they look at you like you have 20 heads attached to your body. They're like, the Germans, what's the problem with the Germans? But they hear the Russian language. And I know this because I made the mistake of speaking Russian in Krakow one day when my mother called me on my cell phone. I picked up in the middle of a restaurant out with her. I thought we were going to get tossed out of there. They hate the Russians. I mean, I know Polish people who live in this country. They hate them because they were force-fed that bullshit propaganda their entire lives under Soviet rule, when they had a puppet regime ruling them on behalf of Moscow.
Yeah, no.
There's your problem. There's your problem. And they joined NATO because they believed NATO was the solution. That is the most important thing. I bet you if you ask any Pole, the most important thing that they did for their national security since 1945 was finally getting admitted into NATO. And this guy, this representative of the United States, has the nerve and the temerity to sit there and tweet out that it's a problem in search of a solution, or a solution in search of a problem, whatever the hell he said. This is who's representing us. And I'm sorry, I can pull up the New York Times and share it right now, but the point is, none of this is on the front page. None of this is on the front page.
We're paying for this. We are all paying for his salary. We're paying for Rubio's salary. We're paying for all of this. All of this. Americans are paying for all these vile, despicable, horrifying, endangering to our national security policies via their taxes. So we're being forced to pay for this regime that is putting a wrecking ball to everything that America stood for. It's horrible.
Hey, I just pulled up the New York Times, and here's what on their front page. It's a podcast with Ross Douthat, their columnist. The shifting politics of transgender rights. What? I'm sorry to curse. Are you fucking kidding me? Are we still doing this? What have we just spent 40 minutes talking about? What have we just spent 40 minutes talking about? And we're talking about that's on the front page, the shifting politics of transgender rights. Wake up, A.G. Sulzberger. Wake up.
Well, I mean, New York Times has a history of covering up for monsters. They did for Dad. They covered up for Russia's genocide against Ukrainians, said that nothing was happening there. So they have a history. Before we go, I want to spend a few minutes closer to home, literally closer to home, in the White House. And this is something troubling, and I want to sit down and write about this. So the White House, again, with our tax money, launched, their propaganda White House website. You go to whitehouse.gov. It's like, really, it's propaganda. It looks like RT or Taz or the Novosti or any of those. But they just launched a bias meter. And basically, this is to go after press, and this is to, um, report on the Washington Post and New York Times and CNN and every mainstream media outlet, ProPublica and PR, whoever is reporting anything on this regime, to put them on this with the journalists, with the article, and to call them and single them out. One, as someone, Julie and I are beyond familiar with, not only Soviet but Russian propaganda, and how their media and information, space is designed. This is something that's extremely troubling because, one, they did this White House, basically, I'm telling you, it looks like Breitbart, like, forget even TV, it looks like Breitbart, whatever. Now they launched this. And then after they launched this, yesterday news came out that they are launching a tip line. So now if you see any article, like, for instance, Hexeth may have committed war crimes or murder, depending, whichever is weighed legally, because we're technically not in a war, then it would have been murder. If we are in a war, then war crimes.
Let's cut to the chase. It's murder, but go ahead. Yeah.
So, it was Washington Post who broke this. And, American people would never have a clue of what was happening, and the fact that, the defense secretary and potentially an admiral committed war crimes by doing a double tap strike, which, who is the only country that does double tap strikes? This is Russia. Russia does them all the time, whether it's in Ukraine, Syria. They will hit something, see that there are survivors, and say, oh, no, we don't want survivors. And we're talking about in hospitals and, humanitarian corridors. And then they go and strike again. In Ukraine, they hit a residential building, wait for first responders to arrive, and then, make sure to do a double strike to kill the first responders. Now, this is what the United States is doing. We wouldn't know if it wasn't the Washington Post who broke this story that's serious enough that you have freaking Republican senators and Congress people, a handful of them, that are sounding the alarm that potentially there may be war crimes and calling for investigations. Guess what? This is the type of reporting that is now going to be on this bias meter, endangering the journalists, intimidating the journalists, singling them out. And we all know every time Trump singles, someone out, that they end up getting bomb threats and swatting and, potential actual attacks. So, I mean, this, this, what they're doing is extremely dangerous, and we're very much headed, at least in the information space, towards a Russian style information ecosphere.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we're at a point here now. I just want people to understand. I don't know about you, Olga. I think you're on this list also. I've always said it's a point of pride for me that I was and continue to be on a list of Americans who's banned from setting foot in Russia.
I actually was never put on the list.
Oh, you're never put. Well, then enjoy summer.
I got put on a traitor list by the person who murdered what's his name? Oh my God, Alexander Litvinenko with polonium.
Oh,
okay. He put out a list of traitors and put me on a different list.
If you're not on this list, I guess you could enjoy summer on the Volga in my place. But anyway, I got put on this list, and the way I found out I was put on this list was I saw this list being released. I start looking at the list, and I'm like, Joe Biden, okay, this makes sense. Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, this makes sense. And then we get somewhere to down the list and I'm like, Julie Roginski. I'm like, wait, what? Anyway, I thought long and hard about why I got put on this list. And the reason I got put on this list is because when I was at Fox, I think I told you about this before, I had a show. They crazily gave me a show on foxnews.com, which back then they were not paying attention to. Now it's like the money tree for them. But back then, this was in 2016, 2017, they weren't really paying attention to it. They gave me my own show and they gave me a producer. And since nobody's paying attention to it, I decided to use it as an opportunity to go after Putin. And I would look into the camera every week and I would literally riff in Russian and tell Vladimir Putin that he sucked. And it was great because Fox never kind of paid attention. Nobody ever paid attention to it, but the Russians paid attention to it. And they started calling Fox and they started complaining that I was a Russophobe, which is hilarious considering that I am Russian. They started complaining nonstop on Twitter. And anyway, it became a big deal. Anyway, I then end up on this banned list and I don't really care because that's not like I was planning on going to Russia while Vladimir Putin was around anyway. But I say this to say that it is it's not a big leap. It's a one tiny little step from what you say publicly as a member of the media and being put on a list. And that list is what the White House now has. Now, if I were to set foot in Russia today, I would be immediately arrested and I presume tried for violating the travel ban and sent to the gulag probably for the rest of my life. And we're getting there, my friends. I just want to be very clear. We are getting there.
And
because that's what's, I just want to be clear. That's what's happening with this list. It starts with lists. It doesn't end with lists.
No. My parents were on lists.
Yeah, of course, Oliver. Yeah.
And on the flip side, so I'm not on the sanctions and travel ban list of Russia's, which they built out a nice, interesting to see how many they add and who they add. But about a year or so ago, what is his name? Lugavoy, who was responsible. He was an FSB agent who, in I believe 2004, went to Britain and is the one who was responsible for giving Litvinenko polonium in his tea, and that was the first, state-sanctioned murder that we saw live happening outside of Russia. He put me on a list and, on a list of traitors and posted about me in his Telegram. Now, the reason I say this is that this is now on the other side of what the White House is doing and how Trump operates with this. So he posted me on that. At the same time, you had Malofeyev's rag, Tsargrad, and another unknown Russian, rag outlet that's probably controlled by FSB, put me in an article about the pilot who was assassinated. And the article started out that this pilot who defected to Ukraine, a Russian pilot, then made his way, Ukrainians gave him a new identity, made his way to Spain. He was assassinated by the Russians. They found out who he was, his new identity, tracked him down. The article started, both in Malofeyev's and that his murder basically flushed out all the raps and the traitors to the country, and that we're all going to see the same fate. So this is the intimidation tactics that they use, where they start, not directly putting a death threat against you, but putting you in a random article. I didn't even write about this thing. And that's same thing what Trump does. And I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene and a few of his own people, received, Thomas Massey and others received the same medicine, that once you get put on a list and get a target on you, the intimidation that follows. And this is exactly what this White House thing, is. And like you said, anytime there are lists, the Nazis made lists, the Soviets made lists, the Russians make lists. Anytime there's a list, I mean, it's not good. You don't want to be on any list. We don't want to even get into a habit of tip lines, having informants, rat you out within the government, which they set up, or these bias meters, and any, this is all unhealthy, undemocratic, un-American. This is very, very, like, we're crawling into Russia's territory.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Olga. Couple of housekeeping notes. Olga's birthday is next week. Happy birthday, Olga. We're not going to ask how old, but still younger than me.
20,
However,
21.
21 forever.
Forever.
21. Oh God, I would not want to be 21 again. I don't know about you. I'm very happy.
Actually,
very, very happy not being 21 anymore. But anyway, so Olga is traveling. We are not going to be doing our show on Tuesday. We're not going to be doing active measures on Tuesday, although we will have our final installment of active measures in your inboxes on Monday. We will do the show when Olga gets back. So that's not the last week was not the last show, but still.
They're scheduled towards the end of the month. Both Thursdays fall on New Year's Day and Christmas Day.
Yeah. So yeah. So Olga is also not going to be here next Thursday for Pax Americana. So we will be skipping next week. We will be back on the 18th, and then not again until New Year's or after New Year's, just because, as Olga pointed out, both Christmas and New Year's are on Thursdays. And, I don't know if you want to spend your Christmas with us. I hope you have other things to do, or at least some happier shows to watch other than us complaining about how much the United States government is selling us out to the Russian Federation. So have a wonderful week, and we will see you a week from this coming Tuesday. I will be here tomorrow on May Day at 8 a.m. with Michelle Kinney. But for Olga and me, we are signing off until not in this week, but the week after, the week of the 15th. So we'll see you back here on the 16th.
And thank you to everyone for, oh my God, my birthday started today. I'm excited. Birthday week.
All right. Have a wonderful, wonderful trip, Olga. Happy birthday. We love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And
thank
everybody else.
See everyone in 2 weeks.
We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.